This lesson is going to teach you how to do the detailing, dimensioning for the PRB25-4 3D model. Now, it doesn't look that threatening when you look at this, but there's actually quite a lot to dimension this properly. It really lacks adequate information for someone in the shop, in the CNC machining shop, to be able to create a program to cut this out. So I'm going to get started, and this is what it looks like in its 3D model glory. It's a beautiful looking 3D model, but the drawing file will have quite a bit of work. So we're going to go File, New, Templates, English, ANSI, Inch, IDW, and Create. We're not going to use a D-size sheet, so we're immediately going to switch this to a C-size sheet, which is going to bring in some views. Again, I can keep the isometric view here. I will scale it down to about 3/4. And I'm going to keep the top view, but not the right side view. Because I want to create a sectional view there. So I'm going to work on that first. So I'm going to go to Section, click into this view, find the center here, come up a bit, and cut through. And we're going to create that about there. I am going to move this over a bit because we are going to have some detail views that we're going to need to add to this. So I'm going to begin with doing centerline annotations, which is something that I've taught you to do. So we're going to go center mark. We're going to highlight all the circles first. And we're also going to create one here and here for that slot. And what we can also do to show that these circles or these holes are in line with one another is we can select the center line option here and then select from this quadrant to this quadrant, and that would join them up. Right, we're going to do the same thing here. And here. And here. All right. And because there's some symmetry here, right? This section here is symmetrical only. We'll add a center line with a bisector here to here, and then we'll just grip it out like this. Just beyond where this radius and this radius are sitting, like beyond the wall thickness of these two drilled holes here. And that's fine. Now, in the hidden detail view, this is very difficult to understand because there's so many hidden lines. So how do I know how to apply center lines to this? It's really, really confusing. So this is something new that we can do that will take the headache right out of it. And we can click into this view, right click, and then go down to automated center lines. And automated center lines menu will come up. We're going to make sure that hole features are pushed in as well as cylindrical features. So push this in as well, and make sure projection is pushed in, and then hit OK. And it will add all the center lines in automatically for you that it needs. So that is something very handy that will make, because that would be an extra headache we just don't need to deal with when we're working on this project. So when it comes to detailing this, a lot of what we see here will naturally just transfer to that front view. So I'm going to begin by working on that first. So we do need overall dimensions. So that is the 380. And we also need to know the width of this as well, right? That could go on the top view or the sectional view. It doesn't really matter. I do need to know the height, so I'm going to be using these views to communicate that. Make sure that we're keeping dimensioning, fairly consistent throughout. Right? When I look at these things, I should get a sense that we're being consistent everywhere, right, for professionalism. Now, this back wall, here we'll add a dimension to it. It is 0.100. And we'll also make this typical because that is typical in other places as well. And we'll just bring this text in line with the 3.80. All right. Now we'll take a look at the front view. So we're going to run some dimensions. We need to know, we're going to have to come up above this section line here. So we need to know the 0.4. We need to know the distance between these holes here, right? I don't need to dimension it below because the center line is connecting them, right? I'm actually trying to limit my dimensioning as best as I can. It's not going to be super easy with a part like this, unfortunately. But you have the benefit of my experience, right, which is very helpful. So this is not dimensioned like this on the sheet, but I'd like to know from the top to the center of the slot, I'd like to know what that dimension is. And it would be helpful to know from here to this center line what that is, right? And that's basically all I need. I don't need the other one dimension because it's going to be over-dimensioned because I already have the overall height. I do need to know the radius of it, which is going to be placed in line with the 1.45, right? Don't crowd it, but that can go right here. And I also need to know the radius, right? This radius here is found in quite a few places, so it's also going to be edited to be a typical because it's located in so many spots. We also need to know the distance between this hole and this hole. Two inches. And we also need to know this wall thickness here. And again, that wall thickness is located in a lot of places, so we're going to make that typical. And let's bring that dimension lower, right, off into the outside view, because I'm trying to keep dimensions from between views when possible. And this is something that I really can't do that here so much. I really could put these dimensions down below if I wanted to, but I think for now I'm going to keep them up here. All right, I may make a change later. We need to know from here to here the 2 inches this way, and I need to know from this hole to this hole, which is 1 inch. And I also need to know the distance, the 0.40. I really don't have room for it on the left side because I'm identifying this radius here. All right, well, I'm going to put it here. And we may make a change, right? This is also typical. Oh, so typical. And that's going to interfere with that, so I'm going to leave that up, right? Because this is going to crowd this 0.10 typical. All right. Take a look at this. I also need to know the diameter of this hole. Again, this is typical as well. This is, I'm going to put that in line with the 1 inch. 0.4 tip. All right. So that pretty much takes care of the hole positions, right? And our slot positions. Not exactly. We know where the slot starts and ends on the Y value, but not the X value. So what we're going to have to do now is do some detail views, which is something that you've seen before. So I'm going to go to Place Views, select Detail, and I'm going to create a detail view here. It's going to be Detail View B. We can put it up here. These detail views, it doesn't really matter so much where they go. What's important is just that you grab them correctly. All right. So that's okay like this. It doesn't really interfere with anything. It's going to cross over extension lines, but I don't have it crossing between the section A and the arrow, which is also okay. So we're going to annotate this with center lines. So center mark here and here, and here, and also in these positions. Now we're not doing that here. It's not something you normally do, but because we're in a detail view and I'm using these features to dimension, it's very important that I include those center lines to be able to accurately detail this detail view. All right, so to get started, we need to know a dimension from where this begins, this 0.20. We're also going to need to know from here to here, the 0.47. We're also going to need to know, I'm going from this, as this is absolute dimensioning, by the way. Right? We're not chaining these, we're going absolute. It's a better style of dimensioning, and it's also going to make our dimensioning lives easier for this part because there's so many things we have to dimension, and it's going to become way too difficult if we do relative chain dimensions. But notice how I ran this dimension to the bottom of this center line here and not the top one. I'm going to be doing these ones in a different detail view. So we're going from here to here again. This is going to be 1.07. Try to keep everything consistent. First dimension can be a little further away. That's something I've always taught. Now we're going to work on this side. So we're going from here to the top, 0.20, and from here to here, 0.63. I'm probably going to run out of room, so I'm going to have to move this over, just move this over to get more room. Dimension coming from the top surface down to this center line, it's going to give me 0.75, and then from here to here, 0.79. All right, so I've got these two in position. I've got these two bottom ones. I've got where the height of where this one sits, and about, I think that's all I'm going to need for this detail view, right? That's all I can do. I really can't include these dimensions here because it's going to be too distorted. The circles have been taken care of on the front view. So we're going to create another detail view. We're going to do this one below here. So back to place views, detail, and I want to make sure I catch pretty much everything in the bottom slot, the bottom half of the slot, about like this. Okay, we're going to drop this one about here. It's very important that we get this entire profiled extrusion right here, right? Because we're going to have to do some dimensioning in terms of showing its position. So we're going to be going back to annotate. We're going to be adding the center marks. And we're also doing here all of these. And this as well. And we may adjust this to be a little larger. We can do that by just stretching it like this. All right. We're going to have to move that section A up a bit, be consistent here. And this dimension here, we'll just kind of move it like this. So it's, in line with the 1.18 and 1.45. So we need to know this dimension from the very bottom to here, this 1.85. And that's going to be symmetrical, right? Because the center line's here, so we know we know where these holes are that are going to be drilled first for this profile or plunge cut with an end mill. And then obviously we know that the wall thickness is 0.100 everywhere. So the CNC programmer, knowing where these two positions are, here and here, and knowing that this wall is 0.100 and it's 1.85 from each end, they should be able to easily figure out the position of these holes right here. So they're not so important to detail on the detail views. But I don't need to show them down here because I did them up above and it's symmetry, right? There's symmetry on this. What I do need to know is include all the things I didn't include up on the first detail view, which is the position of the first drilled hole here, where I did the bottom ones above. I need to know the slot position, right? That's 0.90. And I also need to know this one, right? And it would also be helpful to know, we're going to move this detail C down probably over here, so it's a little out of the way. And we're going to add a annotation here and here. And we're going to detail this. We're getting crowded, so we're going to have to move this up. And also from here to here. That is important as well. So I'm sure you're getting the hint now that yes, this has quite a bit of dimensioning, a lot of absolute position dimensioning. And then we can also go from this side and also from here. Right, that 0.79. All right. So we're almost done with this. I'm just taking a scan here to see if I'm missing anything or if there's something else that I need to do, right? I'm just running a few arbitrary dimensions here just to double check a few things. Right, so that is in the same position, this 2.47. So that's okay. And so we'll include that one as well up here. So center mark, dimension from here to here. It's not going to read 2.47 because I dimensioned it from the other side. All right, I also have it in both positions, which is good. All right. Let's also take a look at this. I didn't dimension the slot the way they showed it here. I just find that a bit sloppy. I'd like to show, from the center point arc of each position of where the slot begins and where it ends. So I'm happy with that. This is a bit crowded here to have these dimensions shown below, so I'm going to leave this as it is. This 0.8 here, I might just drag that like this, just to kind of clean that up a bit. And what we also need to show, we may bring this over just a bit because, again, it's crowded. Right? This is a C-size sheet and we're almost using most of it up. We do need to know a typical dimension of this radius, right? This is found throughout. So this is radius 10. This is a typical dimension. And we also need to know this. This 0.3 dimension. Right? This is also typical as well. Right? That's typical everywhere, right? Because this is shown in multiple locations throughout this drawing. All right, I think we're going to call this one done at this point. I think that's pretty much everything that we're going to need to know. I'm just going to shrink that down a bit just so it's not touching here. But there's a lot of care in this drawing, as you can see. But it looks good, right? Everything is well represented. I'm not too concerned about running any detail views here, because I think that that's going to be no problem for the person in the shop, right? Because this is pretty easy to figure out. We know that this wall thickness is 100 thou typical. We know the positions of these holes, right? And we also know this radius value, and it's easy to blend a fillet into all these corners here. So I don't feel that this really needs a detailed view at all. I think that's fine. We've got the 1.75 here. We can run a dimension here. And I am actually, we may just run a dimension for this, actually. I just want to make sure that's not in a different position. And it may be. So let's run this. Right, we get 1.80 here. And I'm not happy with where that dimension is, by the way. That's just going to be arbitrary. Yeah, so it's different. This is 1.75. So what we're going to do is delete that dimension. I'm going to delete this annotation. I'm going to have to shrink that a bit. Yeah. Okay. And let's move this down a bit. Centerline annotation here, and run a dimension there. All right. Now I feel like this has been well represented. Let's sneak this underneath. Bring it up a bit, bring this down. Notice how I take a lot of care, in trying to make sure that these dimensions look good, right? This is something I've always taught, and, consistency is so important. All right. I am happy with this. Okay. All right. So I'm going to call this done. Save. And I'm going to fill the title block in. This is very, very simple. My name, our school, PRB25-4. Revision number is 0. Part number, this is 4M1-03. 03. This was our third drawing file. Checked, my checker. You have your checker as well to input there. And apply and close. All right, let's look at this. Looks good. And that is it. So remember, save this, and we're going to be adding this to our assignment folder Dropbox, and we're also going to be creating a PDF of this. So when we go File, Save As, don't push Save As, go Save Copy As. And then here you can change this to PDF. I have some people in the class who tell me they can't make a PDF. Well, whether your computer has Adobe or not doesn't really matter. You should still be able to create the PDF and give it to someone like me who has the ability to open a PDF. And then hit save, and that is it. So a little bit of a longer video today, but this really had to be done to show you the correct way to detail this. A lot of dimensions, a lot of features in this advanced drawing file. So I'm going to sign off for now, and I'm going to let you work on it. Take care.